British History. Subtitles: Pre-Norman Britain, Medieval England, Tudor England. Presented by Carol Rodriguez, Cristian Cabrera, Natalia Riaño, and Jason de la Rosa.
Hello guys, good afternoon. We are going to talk about the British history. I'm going to explain first of all the pre-Norman Britain. In the third millennium BC, the Iberians introduced their metalworking skills and their first real civilization to Britain. In the 8th century, they were overrun by various Celtic invasions. But in the 43 AD, the Romans invaded Britain by Claudius, leader of Rome in that time. So they took over Britain for more than 200 years and left behind their roots, seats of Christianity and sites important cities like London. In the 5th century, after the invasion of the Angles, Saxon and Jutes from northern Europe, the Latin ways of life all vanished, like political organization and language. Under Edward in the 9th century, these pagan peoples were converted to Christianity by the preachers from Rome, who brought them the learning and civilization. The Vikings, the name means warrior, first raided England to plunder it. Then, in the days of Alfred of Wessex, they began to win white lands, to pluck and to rule. In the 10th century, England fell under Danish rule, with King Canute finally managing to unite the Anglo-Saxon and Danes at the beginning of 11th century.
In 1066, after William Normandy defeated the Anglo-Saxon king Harold at the Battle of Hastings, he introduced the Norman feudal system. In 1215, the Norman barons, with the help of the church, forced the king to sign the Magna Carta at Runnymede. Origins of Parliament was found by John's successor Henry III, but in 1295, Edward I called a new parliament known as the Model Parliament, in which were present the barons, earls, and the high clergy, with knights and burgesses representing their shires and boroughs.
In 1337, the 100 Years' War fought between France and England. In 1348, a plague called the Black Death that killed a third of the population of England was the consequence of the war. In 1381, there was a revolt called the Peasant Revolt. This was the first step for the ending of the feudal system in England.
Feudal England. No sooner 100 years were over than a time-power struggle began for the English crown between two families, the House of Lancaster and the House of York. The War of the Rose, as called because both families uses a rose as their symbol. And when Henry or Tudor united the two rival houses, giving origin to the Tudor dynasty. During Henry's reign, the medieval period came to a close. Men were no longer tied to manors and estates in the country. the power of the towns, with their educating and instruction of middle classes, began to make itself. Or resistance or learning partly as a result of the printing press, which ended the church monopoly of learning. Henry's sons and heir, Henry VIII, was a typical Renaissance prince, handsome, learned, ambitious, and unscrupulous. He also had an instinctive understanding of his times. It was his creation of the Royal Navy that enabled England to realize her imperialistic ambition under Elizabeth and defy the Pope and the Catholic powers of Europe. Henry used Parliament to establish himself as the head of the Protestant Church of England with the Act of Supremacy. His decision, his reformation, and his dissolution of the monasteries served to destroy papal authority in England and at the same time provide Henry with much needed wealth. Elizabeth I was an orthodox ruler. She restored national unity, opposing extremely doctrines and supporting moderate from the Protestantism similar to that of their fathers. Her reign is considered to many in golden age of the history, producing not only poets of the stature of Shakespeare and Spenser, but also prosperity for the cultured nation. During this period, great rearing companies and series as East Company were also established. Parliament was regularly called and consulted, while justice of the peace administered justice and carried out all the ordinary functions of local government.
We hope you like it and God bless you.